Hi there, and welcome back to Lamp Oil Stock, our 10 Commandment series. This is a continuation of the entire series. We want to welcome you back. Hopefully you've been following along with us throughout the entire series. Today, we're going to look at the next commandment, the sixth commandment, which is,
Thou shalt not kill.
Thou shalt not kill.
That is Exodus 20 and 13. So, let's define the word kill. Kill on Google is defined as cause the death of a person, animal, or other living thing. Put an end to or cause the failure or defeat of something. Or an act of killing, especially of one animal by another. So we can look at Exodus 20 and 13 and say that is not the true translation that you should be going by, because I kill a lot of shit. I really do. You have an ant in my house, I am going to kill it. Okay? I'm not even going to ask questions. I had my husband kill a mouse we found in our house, and then I felt guilty about it. Because it was so cute and it was so tiny.
No,
but it was
wasn't.
a mouse.
No, it was not cute.
Okay, so I've had to kill chickens when they've been hurt.
You have to kill chickens for food.
Well, that too. Fleas, I kill them.
This verse is not, kill is a mistranslation. Kill is a mistranslation. It is not about killing. That is not the issue. It is about murder.
So, yeah, that would be a better translation. Thou shalt not murder. So, what is murder? Well,
You gonna Google murder first?
I'm gonna Google murder.
While you're doing that, let me bring up something else for just a second. So,
Okay.
the sixth commandment. I don't know if you put two and two together here. What happened if we step away from the commandments for a second? What happened on the sixth day in Genesis? Do you remember?
What happened on the sixth day in Genesis? God created man?
God created man. That's correct. God created man on the sixth day. And then the sixth commandment is thou shalt not murder, which you're going to define here in just a moment. If you notice, throughout most of the Bible, it's cyclical, meaning something that happened before, happens again. Just like he says, I'm going to tell you the end from the beginning. The sixth day is when he created man. The sixth day is we are not supposed to murder. Now, you got your definition?
Yeah, okay. So if you Google it, it says the unlawful premeditated killing of one human being by another, or kill someone unlawfully and with premeditation. So this is kind of just not right either. Not according to the Bible. That's not exactly what murder is either. If we go to the KJV dictionary definition of murder, it says the act of unlawfully killing a human being with premeditated malice by a person of sound mind. To constitute murder in law, the person killing another must be of sound mind or in possession of his reason, and the act must be done with malice, prepense of forethought, or premeditated, but malice may be implied as well as expressed. An outcry when life is in danger. To kill a human being with premeditated malice, or to destroy, to put an end to. Canst thou murder thy breath in middle of a word? And this definition is still not really accurate either. If we go to the Bible, we see that murder is, now, first off, we need to understand that we are talking about Hebrew Israelites. If you kill a Hebrew Israelite without it being righteous, which means without there being a law stating that he should be killed, then it is murder. So if I throw a rock and somehow it hits somebody in the head and kills them, even though I didn't think or try to kill that person, it is considered murder. It has nothing to do with what we consider it to be today, because today they would say, oh well, that's an accident, that's not murder. Well, no, it is murder, and there are repercussions and penalties if you commit murder. Now God does make a difference. So if I accidentally commit murder, he gives me a way of not having to be to not having to be punished for that consequence. So if I accidentally kill my brother outside, I can then flee to a city and live out the rest of my life in that city. It's kind of like Hebrew Israelite jail, but it's not a jail, it's a city. You go there and you can live there without any repercussions. Well, besides the fact that you have to stay in the city from without being killed. Now, if I don't make it to that city in time before the Avenger of Blood catches me, then he's gonna kill me, and I'm not gonna get away with that. But if an accidental murder is still a murder, and there are punishments and repercussions for it. It's just that if it's accidental, you have a way to get out of it. I can flee to this city. Now, if I kill someone intentionally and I flee to that city, and even if I make it there, the Avenger of Blood can come in that city and kill me, because they're going to send him out, because there is no getting away with it if it's not if it's premeditated. But if it's not premeditated, then I can go to one of these sanctuary cities and live out the rest of my life, or at least live there until the high priest dies. When the high priest dies, then I can leave again without fearing repercussions of what happened. So a lot of people say, in today's world, we think, well, that's manslaughter, that's murder, that's, whatever. Those terms don't exist in the Bible. Murder is murder. Now, when we say killing, that's a whole different idea, right? That means that if I go to war, I can't kill somebody because thou shalt not kill. No. As a Hebrew Israelite, we killed people, our enemy, all the time. There is nothing that says that you cannot kill your enemy. As a matter of fact, you are supposed to kill your enemy. If you look at Moses, when he was in Egypt, at first he was a slave. Now, a lot of people might think he wasn't a slave because he lived in the Pharaoh's house, and he was, he was royalty, or treated as royalty, but he was a slave. He was mentally enslaved. He didn't really know who he was or what he was doing. And even though he had a lot of freedom in his actions, he was taught evil stuff, and he lived an evil life, so he was enslaved. Now, there comes a point when when the Most High starts to wake him up to who he is, not really an Egyptian, but the people who were slaves, and he starts seeing the bad things that are happening to his people, and he sees one of those people being hurt by an Egyptian, and he kills that Egyptian, and he flees the city. Now, that was not considered murder because he was a slave. He started to wake up, and he realized who his enemy was, and his enemy was hurting one of his people, so he killed him. Now, he did have to flee, of course, because those people were in control and power, and if they had caught him, then he would have had some type of repercussion. But the Most High wasn't going to make him suffer or pay for killing his enemy. Now, he leaves, of course, and he stays gone for a long time, but he eventually comes back. And while he's gone, the Most High works on him and completely wakes him up to who he is and who the Most High is and what his job and stuff is supposed to do. So a lot of people say that Moses was not allowed to go to the promised land because he killed that person. That's not true. That's the Christian flavor that they've sprinkled all into the Bible that has absolutely nothing to do with reality. So there is nothing wrong with killing your enemy, because that's not considered murder, and that's not what this commandment is talking about. This commandment is talking about other Hebrew Israelites, and it's talking about premeditated murder, or, well, just any type of killing of Hebrew Israelites, because there were laws, there were judges, and there were rules. And so it was not my job to, as I was not, as a judge, you put out judgment, but they had to be brought in front of a judge in order for judgment to be dispensed. Now, there are cases where if someone was to try to hurt you, well, see, now that's also different. If someone broke into my house and tried to hurt me, then I could kill them, if they were Hebrew Israelite or not, because you could defend yourself, and that wasn't considered murder, but it would still be taken up in front of the judges for them to come out with their final say.
Right. Now, see, you're talking about two different things here. One of them, and that's an issue that we have today, where we talk about the justifications for killing. So, someone broke into your house and you killed them, right? Well, it's justified because they broke into my house. But this is a point of view from today's world. We're not talking about the act of killing somebody or the death. We're now talking about the defense of the person who killed them. If you notice, whenever we talk in today's world, whenever we're talking about the act of someone being killed, we are always talking about it in terms of the person who did the killing. So, like, that person murdered this other person. That person committed manslaughter to this other person. They're always talking about it in some sort of version of defense, where the Bible doesn't do that. What the Bible says is, okay, this person died. This person was killed. What happened? Why? If you'll notice, it always goes to the judges. I'm not very good at just doing explanations, but it always goes to the judges, and the judges make a decision. So one example is when they stone someone for adultery. That's not murder. That's carrying out a punishment. That's not considered to be murder. So in that particular case, I'm just trying to use that as an example. The killing of that person has nothing to do, it's not murder.
No, it's righteous judgment.
That's correct. Righteous judgment is taking place in that instance. So, as we continue on with this, now, there is a lot more to this particular commandment than just the act. Okay? The act, of course, is what we are mainly focusing on. Or at least that seems to be what everybody thinks about mostly, is, did so I killed this person. I murdered him. And as we were just talking about a moment ago, it has to do with, part of what it has to do with is what you did and your intent with doing it. If you killing a Hebrew Israelite and thinking to yourself, I'm going to kill this person, blah, 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 that's murder. When that person, that's what we were talking about here.
So, one of my issues with this commandment is the way it's worded in the Bible, because it just leads people to all different types of conclusions and thought processes, which aren't necessarily true. They're not even biblically relevant, but because the world has defined this as being this way, we just kind of accept it, so we'll get upset or mad or think bad about someone who's done something when maybe we shouldn't be. And I'll give you an example of that. In the New Testament, you have Christ, who is walking the earth, and he is doing what he's supposed to be doing. He is teaching the law to the enslaved. He is teaching them how to live and living a righteous life. But he's doing it within the confines of the slavery that our people are in, right? Because we were occupied by the Romans at that time. So even though the Romans were our enemy, the people didn't really recognize it to that point. They weren't at war with them. They had conceded to their place or their predicament. And so they were trying to live with and within that society. Christ was coming to show them how they were supposed to live. Then on the other hand, you have a character in the Bible called Barabbas. Now Barabbas, in the Bible, when Christ is arrested, the Romans come to the people and they give up Christ to be set free for the Passover, or Barabbas. Now, the Romans believe that Barabbas is this horrible person, right? Because he has decided that he's not going to live within the confines of the society that the Romans have set up for us. He would be considered a rebel. He was trying to live outside that and help his people, who didn't even really realize that they were enslaved, become free. So he was killing Romans and people who were siding with them. But they bring him out and they're like, oh, this is a murderer. Do you want to set him free, or do you want to set Christ free? Now, they thought that since he was killing them, that the people would not like Barabbas. And that's why they chose Barabbas against Christ, because they had nothing against Christ. They didn't really want to free Christ. They didn't want to have anything to do with Christ. They just wanted to get rid of him.
You're talking about the Romans.
The Romans, yes. They didn't understand what was going on with the Hebrew leaders, the Levites, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They didn't understand their reasoning for wanting to kill Christ. They didn't want to have that blood on their hand. So they brought out Barabbas, who they thought was this horrible murderer, thinking surely they would choose to set Christ free over a murderer. But to the people, was Barabbas a murderer? I would say no. He wasn't. He had decided that the Romans was his enemy, and he was killing his enemy. So from the Romans' point of view, he was a really horrible person. From the Hebrew Israelite point of view, he was kind of a hero. So when they said, free Barabbas, the Romans couldn't understand, right? You want this murderer out in your street? Well, he wasn't killing us. Why do we care if he's walking around in the streets? Or Christ, who the Hebrew Israelites feared because of the things he was saying and what he was bringing to fruition. So, of course, they free Barabbas, but this is also a mindset and a way that you think. Now, I don't believe in coincidence, right? So why did they choose Barabbas over other people? You need to look and think about that. Because when Christ was crucified, there were other people up on the cross. Why didn't they choose one of those other people to give to as a choice for them to free? I think that Barabbas was set free because, according to the Most High, he hadn't committed murder. And so he shouldn't have been punished for that crime. Now you can say, well, Christ was innocent, and he was, but he had a mission. His blood needed to be shed in order to save us. And so at this time, it did two things. It ensured that Christ's blood was going to be shed in order to save us. He was going to be the lamb for the slaughter. And it set free someone who was fighting for the Most High's people. Now, I will say that he started his fight way too soon. It was not time for us as a people to be awoken and fight our enemy at that point. So what he was doing was not going to win. There's no way that what he did could have brought us or saved us from our captivity. But he didn't know that. And there were a lot of people who agreed with him. I mean, when Judas betrayed Christ, it was because he thought that Christ was going to start this war to free us from our captivity. And so he was trying to force Christ's hand by betraying him, thinking that then Christ would just bring out the angels and destroy and kill all of these people. But that wasn't what Christ came to do at that time. But that's not saying that you should not kill your enemy. But when you look at the word kill and you look at the definitions that are used today in modern society, these things are geared around being beneficial to our captors and not being of something that is going to help the Hebrew Israelites. All of that being said, I'm not saying that people should get up and start killing their enemy. You have to first wake up. Our people have to first wake up. They have to decide that they're not going to be captive anymore. Not just physically, because those physical chains were taken off. They weren't with us. They weren't on us when Christ was walking the street. The physical chains aren't there, but the mental chains are. You can't have it both ways. You can't try to be a part of the society and also fight the society. You have to decide one or the other. And then if you decide to not be a part of this society, then you can leave that and go to war or fight and defend yourself. But as long as you're trying to have it both ways, what is it? You're sitting on the fence, then you have no ground to do anything. You are stuck. You know, in Revelations, Christ says he's going to spit the lukewarm out of his mouth. Well, right now we have a whole society filled with lukewarm people. People who say, oh yeah, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. But at the same time, we're still taking all of the benefits that this society has and using them while kind of bitching about the things that we don't like. Moses had to give up everything he had. All of his learning, all of his money, all of his position, his good times. He had to give all of that up in order to get the Most High. And then he could come back and help his people. It took a long time. The Most High had to get rid of a lot of stuff. He dealt with Moses for a long time to get him to the right spot that he needed to be at. But you can't have something that was bad and incorporate that bad with the good. You have to start over. And that's an issue that the Most High is working with me and my family on, is because we still enjoy a lot of the things that the society has, and it's difficult trying to
get out of it, to
get exercise ourselves from
ourselves. We fat. There is no exercise. That's not the word you wanted to use. You mean to exit the society. I got you.
That's exercise.
Yes, it is exercise. I totally understand. Okay, listen. I want to bring up a couple of grounding things here at the end of the video. And maybe this ain't the end, but there's a couple of things I want to bring up. Earlier, a moment ago, you were talking about the Avenger of Blood and what happens in Hebrew Israelite society if a Hebrew Israelite murders another Hebrew Israelite. If there is an actual murder that takes place, and how someone could leave and go to a city of refuge. This is probably something you've probably never heard before. But get your Bibles, take a look at Numbers 35:25. I would actually start a little bit sooner, maybe Numbers 35:20, to kind of go through the whole story. It talks about the Congress shall deliver the slaver out of the hands of the avenger of blood. This is talking about someone who murders another person unknowingly, and how they can flee to a city of refuge, what happens while they are there, the whole bit. But take your Bibles, get an opportunity. That is in Numbers 35 and 25 or 35. I would probably start at Numbers 35 and 20 and kind of go there. It's well worth checking out. Another thing I want to bring up, we were talking about the New Testament and Christ, what Christ thought about what was going on with Christ at the time. The thing to remember about a lot of these laws, most of these laws, assume something that is not necessarily going on today. It assumes that you are a part of the Hebrew Israelite community. And when I say community, like you are surrounded with Hebrew Israelites. This is the assumption. It is talking to Hebrew Israelites about Hebrew Israelites. It is not talking about Hebrew Israelites and the world. That is not what is going on here. All right. So
yes,
with
holy
that
means to be separate. If you look at Egypt, the Hebrew Israelites lived in Egypt, but they didn't live in Egypt. They lived in like a little city on the outside of Egypt. So you're supposed to be separate.
Let's also say this another way. They lived in Egypt, not a part of Egypt. You could look at an Egyptian and look at a Hebrew Israelite, and you could tell the difference. They were not the same people. They weren't just mixed together and they were the same. They were separated people. All right, so with that in mind...
No, that's exactly what I meant. They didn't live in the city of Egypt.
Well, that's true. But I mean, what I'm trying to say is, if you take in some cases, if you take a black person who's not a Hebrew Israelite and an American, you can't tell the difference.
That's true. But if we had our own communities that were separate, that we defended, guarded, and took care of, then that is the type of lifestyle we're supposed to be leading.
Right. And
not where we're just intermersed and sprinkled with everybody.
Right, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. If you had seen a Hebrew Israelite in an Egyptian market, you would know that that person was different than the other people standing around, is what I'm trying to get to. You know, you would know that they were different. Now, with this thought in mind, I'm going to read Matthew 5 and 21. Okay, so you have heard that it was said to people long ago, "You shall not murder." Now, before I continue, this is Christ speaking. Okay, this is a quote from Christ. and anyone who murders shall be subject to the judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angered with his brother or sister shall be subject to the judgment. Okay? Now, what are we talking about here? His brother and sister. And if you are in churches today, they will say brother and sister means everybody. Just for whatever reason, brother and sister means any person, anywhere, ever. So you're not allowed to hate anything. I don't know why this is why this concept works this way. I have no idea. But that's not what it's talking about here. If you are a Hebrew Israelite and you hate other Hebrew Israelites, you have a problem. You are going to be subject to the judgment. You've got an issue right then and there. This is what it is talking about.
So, and that's because if you hate them, other Hebrew Israelites, then you're not doing what you can to make sure that they are being led to the Most High. So in that, you are killing them. Because if they don't know, then how is it that they're going to do the right thing? And if you hate them, you're not going to try to teach them the law. You're not going to try to correct them when they're doing things that are against the law. And therefore, you are going to be held for that. But at the same token, a lot of people also take that too far in their thinking, right? Because a lot of people say, well, I saved this person. I brought them to this. I did this for them. And you really didn't. Everybody is an individual. And everything that's going through with that individual is what God has for them. So if I see a Hebrew Israelite on the street and I go up to them and I tell them about the Most High, and they hear it, they acknowledge it, and they start following the Most High, I didn't do a damn thing. The Most High did it. Because if I had chosen not to do it, they still would have heard it from someone else and started following the Most High. Or they would have just felt it in their spirit and started following the Most High. So when I did it, the Most High used me. He gave me an opportunity to garner a treasure. You know, it says, don't build up your treasure in the world, but build up your treasures in heaven. So everything that I do, if I'm doing it for the Most High, is me building up a treasure. Because the Most High, He gives life, and he takes it away. So I can tell somebody about it, but I'm not giving them life. Either the Most High is going to give it to them, let them understand it, open their eyes and their ears so they hear, or He's not. My job is to do what the Most High wants me to do and not worry about anything else. But some people, pastors or leaders, they feel that they are special in the sense that you should think very highly of them because they're the one that told you, and they have risked and everything, or they've gone out of their way to do all of this stuff in order to bring it to you. Well, what they did was they were storing up their treasures in heaven. That's what they did. So but that doesn't mean that you owe them anything. If you look in the Bible, it'll tell you Joshua did this. But Joshua doesn't give any credit to himself because he understands that the Most High did it. He may have been the vessel that was used, but if Joshua didn't do it, somebody else would have.
That's right. Okay. You done got off.
I'm sorry. I know.
Yeah, we just need to cover that in advance. Look, if you have not noticed, if you've been watching our videos, you notice we go off on all kinds of subjects and topics based off of this little kernel that we start off with, and that is because of a couple of things. We believe all things are connected. As I read through as I work my way through the Bible, the end is connected to the beginning and vice versa. Everything is connected. So as we are talking about this, the sixth commandment, you'll notice that for us, it drifts into all types of different topics. This is because, like I said, as I read the Bible, all things should lead to the Most High. So since we're talking about the Most High, all kinds of other things come in and into it as well.
So as we talk about the sixth commandment and murder, what you need to do is you need to read some of the stories. You know, verse here, verse there, here a little, there a little, that's great. But you need to understand the characters in the stories and why they are in the stories and the growth that happens in their lives and why these certain things happened in order to make the Bible real to you today. Because it's not just this happened or this happened. Everything has multiple levels and multiple reasons. Just as I was trying to explain with the Christ and the Barabbas thing, when they were saying, should I free Barabbas or should I free Christ? You know, God was working powerfully in both of those lives at the same time. And you know, a lot of people miss one because they're stuck on the other. You know.
Well, let me say something else too. Also, at different times, those stories are going to mean completely different things.
Yes.
You know, so when you're younger, I'm just using as an example. You know, when I was younger and I'm reading this story, the whole focus on that Barabbas Christ story had to do with me. You know, because I was a complete non-believer, and it's about, for me, that story at the time was about being saved, and it had nothing to do with Christ and nothing to do with Barabbas. It has to do with the other guy on the cross who gets saved at the very, very end of the story. That's what it had to do with for me. You know, that was the only really important part of the whole daggone story, was this other guy on the cross at the very last minute gets saved. So, and that does happen, but you know, as I get older,
and you know more.
Yeah, as you learn, as you grow and grow, the next most important part of the story for me was, and this is going to sound really stupid, was that the trial took place at night. Okay, because that's illegal. I mean, that is just straight up illegal. So for me, you're like, okay, so this whole trial thing was just wrong from jump. These people broke the law right then, and all the consequences that fall out of it is because they broke the law.
Well, don't talk about the trial, because we got to get to the bear false witness, and that's a different commandment. We're going to get to it.
We'll get there.
Go back.
We'll get there. No, wait, hold on. Wait, it gets better. For me, it gets better anyway. So now, you know, nowadays, when I hear the whole Christ story, the most important part is Paul denying him 3 times. That is far more important to me than anything else in the story. You know, well, that's not true. It's true. I mean, it's very important to me. Paul denies him 3 times, and it still keeps coming back. But it's the actual, I guess, that Christ is a reflection of the Passover is far more important to me now. You see what I'm saying? There's so many things that you get out of this one story if you're paying attention, and you get them out at different times.
But those things won't, they appear to you or have meaning as the Holy Spirit is working through you as you learn more. The stories that happen, I could go on and on and on about the Egyptian story with Moses. I could go.
That's your favorite story.
Well, yeah, but no, it's really not. The Abraham story, that could go on for. I could talk about that for days and days and days.
We'll have to
on
do
end.
that.
All of the little things that happened in that story that people never talk about, that are so important to how you live and how you believe. So it's really hard for me to talk about just one subject, but I know that people attention span is very short, so I try to make these videos short,
Incredibly long.
and I hope that I don't confuse. I'm not trying to confuse people, because I know my thoughts ramble from one time.
You mean like now?
Yeah, from one thing to the next, but it's not thou shalt not kill. It is thou shalt not commit murder. Thou shalt not murder. And you really need to go back and just start with the Cain and Abel story to understand what murder is, and when it is perfectly fine to kill a person versus when it's not fine to kill a person.
Now, I do want to bring up one last thing before we close out. One last thing. So I'm looking up the sixth commandment.
Okay.
And I invite everybody to, if you get an opportunity, Google the sixth commandment. It's great. So when you Google the sixth commandment, I guess depending upon where you live, because I've gotten different answers twice now. It's different on my phone than if I Google it on the computer. So on my computer, they apparently think I am Catholic. I don't know why. I have no idea. But on my computer, the sixth commandment is the commandment of adultery.
That
For
will
Catholics,
be our next video on
Yeah.
commandments.
So for Catholics, which this is awesome, when you go through and you count the commandments, if you lay them out side by side, they are different. They are completely different. Not completely. I mean, they have many of the same words, but they skip a commandment and then they split another commandment in half later on. When we get around to talking about them, I'll talk about it. But this is where I first noticed the difference. When I Googled the sixth commandment and I got thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not commit adultery, I was like, what? Yeah, I had to go back and look at the list. It's crazy. The Catholics have just different rules. I mean, just wanted to bring that up. They just very different rules. I'm not Catholic in any way, shape, or form, but the Catholics, it's so weird. I mean, it's so strange. We all have the same book, or at least we all have Exodus. Many of us, we all have Exodus, but yet if you say, just read down this page, we get different stuff. I don't even understand that. So we do invite you to get out your Bibles and look this up and read the verses themselves. You have to become familiar with the Bible, your Bible. Get it out, read through it, make sure that you understand what's going on, because it's your soul on the line.
Of course, this is our take on this commandment, and they were my views that I stated. And
yours?
My husband.
They're your views?
I was getting ready to say, and my husband.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
They don't necessarily have to be yours. If they're not yours and you think that we or I was wrong about something, leave us a comment and let us know so we can look over it again. I don't care about what I'm right about. But I'm very interested in what I'm wrong about. So
you don't care about what you're right about?
No, I'm right. What's the point of keep thinking about it? Let's move on. But what I'm not right about, I need to think about again. So.
It's a great way to. That's a way to put that. So hopefully this conversation starter has started you thinking about the sixth commandment and how you interact with each one of the commandments throughout each and every one of your days. Hopefully this has brought a little bit of light into your life. If you have questions, comments, or concerns or anything, let us know. Put us a line down in the comments. You can find us on Black Junction. You can also find us on YouTube and some other places. So shoot us a message. Let us know what you think, and thank you very much.
Bye.